The warning shot cracked through the square before Gideon Ward ever saw the woman's face. Every voice in San Aurelio stopped. Tin cups hung in midair. A mule jerked hard against its rope. Dust lifted off the street in one thin copper sheet as the marshal lowered his rifle and shouted for the crowd to stand back. Gideon had ridden into town for lamp oil, fence staples, and a poultice for Ansel's swollen knee. He found a woman tied to a freight platform. Her wrists were roped in front of her. Her dress was torn at one shoulder. One side of her mouth had already begun to swell. She looked no older than 24, but she did not look beaten. She stood in the center of that platform with her chin up and her eyes moving across the men below her, not begging, not weeping, only counting who might become dangerous first. The auctioneer slapped his hat against his thigh. "Found her 3 miles south of the wagon road," he called. "Stole flour from a widow. Cut a man with his own knife. Mean enough to bite iron." A few men laughed. The woman did not blink. "Name she gives is Marisol Vega. Might be true, might be a lie." "Can she scrub floors?" someone shouted. "Can she saddle horses?" another man called. A third voice came from the saloon rail. "Can she learn to smile?" The laughter rolled ugly through the dust. Gideon felt his hand tighten around the sack of coffee he had just bought. He had buried his wife 7 winters earlier. He had seen drought take cattle, fever take children, and debt take whole ranches. But he had never seen a town pretend cruelty was business. The woman raised her head higher. "I would rather sleep under buzzards," she said, "than under any roof bought by one of you." The laughter thinned. Clem Voss pushed through the crowd. He was a thick-necked cattle trader with silver spurs, whiskey on his breath, and the easy smile of a man who had never been told no by anyone weaker than him. $20, Clem said. "I know what to do with wild stock." Marisol spat into the dirt at his boots. A deputy stepped onto the platform and struck her across the mouth. The sound was small. The silence after it was not. Blood appeared on her lip. Marisol swayed once. Then she straightened. Gideon had seen a mare stand that way after wolves opened her flank, shaking, bleeding, still refusing the ground. "30, another man said. 40, 45. Clem smiled wider. 50. I'll teach her where the fence is." The words moved across Gideon's skin like sand under a saddle blanket. He stepped forward before he had decided to. Boots creaked on the platform steps. Heads turned. Gideon Ward was 38, broad through the shoulders, sun-cut around the eyes, and quiet in the way a loaded rifle is quiet. 120, he said. The auctioneer stared at him. "Cash?" Gideon tossed a leather purse onto the boards. "End it." Clem's smile vanished. "You paying that for trouble?" Gideon looked at him, nothing more. Clem's hand drifted toward the revolver at his hip. The marshal shifted. The horses outside the mercantile stamped again. Gideon did not move. Clem's hand stopped. "No woman's worth dying for," Clem muttered. Gideon answered without raising his voice. "No woman is worth selling." When the deputy cut the rope, Marisol did not rub her wrists where everyone could see. She did not thank Gideon. She did not run. She stared at him as if gratitude were another trap. "What did you buy?" she asked. "Nothing," Gideon said. "That purse says different." "The purse got you off that platform." "And now?" "Now I ride home." Marisol's eyes narrowed. "With me?" "If you choose." The crowd murmured. Clem laughed once. "You'll wake up with your throat opened." Gideon stepped down from the platform and untied his dun gelding. "Then I suppose I'll sleep light." Marisol stayed where she was. Behind her stood men who wanted to turn her into property. Ahead of her stood a stranger who had just paid more than a season's wages and claimed he owned nothing. That was harder to understand than cruelty. Cruelty at least had rules. Gideon glanced back. "There's a spare mare tied to my wagon. She's quick, but she hates bad hands." "I won't ride behind you," Marisol said. "Then ride beside me." "I won't obey you." "I didn't ask." "I might take that mare and disappear." A corner of Gideon's mouth moved. "Then don't forget the canteen." For the first time, confusion slipped through her anger. Then Marisol walked down from the platform, not behind him, beside him. As they left San Aurelio, Clem Voss called after them. "No man alive can gentle that woman." Gideon gathered the reins. "I'm not trying to gentle her." Marisol looked at him sharply. He kept his eyes on the road west. "I'm trying to get her away from men who think gentle is the same as broken." The town fell behind them in a long red cloud. The desert opened ahead. By sundown, Marisol had touched the knife hidden in her boot 4 times. Gideon noticed every time. He said nothing. Night dropped over the New Mexico hills, cold and blue. The wagon road narrowed between mesquite and black rock. Coyotes called from the far ridges, and the moon made the empty land look like bone. Marisol rode well, too well for someone who had only stolen food from a wagon road. Her hands were light, her knees were steady. Her eyes never stopped moving. Left, right, behind, again. Gideon had seen that kind of watching in men who came back from Apache raids, and in widows who still set a second plate because grief had not learned manners. "We'll camp by the seep," he said. Marisol did not answer. A mile later, cottonwoods appeared in a wash where a thin ribbon of water slipped over stone. Gideon dismounted, loosened the cinch on his gelding, and began gathering dry brush. Marisol stayed mounted. "If I leave now," she said, "you'll chase me?" "No." "Why?" "Chasing makes people run harder." She studied him in the dimming light. "That's something you read in a Bible?" "No," Gideon said. "Something I learned from horses." She looked away. She'd sat on opposite sides of the fire. Gideon handed her dried beef, a heel of bread, and 2 green apples. "I'm not hungry," she said. Her stomach answered before he could. Gideon placed the food on a flat stone between them and turned his coffee tin with a stick. Marisol waited until he looked away. Then she ate like food could be taken back, fast, silent, prepared to fight for the last bite. "What happens at your ranch?" she asked at last. "You work if you want wages. You rest if you need a day. You leave if you choose." "That's all?" That's enough. You expect me to be grateful? No. You expect me to be clean and quiet? No. You expect me to tell you where I came from? Gideon lifted the coffee from the coals. Only if you get tired of keeping it. The fire snapped softly. For a moment, Marisol looked younger. Then the hard mask returned. They said I stole flour. I heard. You believe them? I believe hungry people steal food, Gideon said. I believe frightened people cut hands that grab them. And I believe towns will call almost anything justice if enough men laugh at the same time. Marisol looked into the fire. That answer had not been one she prepared for. My father used to say the desert tells the truth by morning, she said. At night, everything looks closer than it is. Gideon stirred the coals. My wife used to say grief does that too. The word wife changed the air. Marisol glanced at him. She died? 7 winters ago. Fever? Childbed. The child, too. The fire made a soft collapse inward. Marisol's anger did not leave her face, but something behind it lowered its weapon. I don't remember my mother's voice anymore, she said. The confession seemed to surprise her. Gideon did not reach for it. He did not ask for the rest of the story. He only nodded. Some mornings I can't remember my wife's laugh, he said. Then I'll hear a spoon strike a cup a certain way, and there it is. Marisol blinked at the flames. I hate forgetting. I know. The silence after that was not trust, not yet. But it was no longer war. Near midnight, Gideon stood and took his rifle to the edge of the trees. You sleep, he said. You trust me with your supplies? No. Marisol almost smiled. Then why sleep first? Because I'm tired, and because you're not the only one who knows where knives hide. That time she did smile, quick as match flame, gone almost before it arrived. She lay down near the fire with the blanket he had given her pulled to her chin. Sleep came to her in broken pieces. Twice she woke with breath locked in her throat, sure a hand was about to close over her mouth. Both times Gideon remained where he had been. Not closer, not touching. Just there. A shadow under cottonwood leaves, watching the dark beyond the camp instead of watching her. At dawn, the desert turned lavender. Marisol sat up slowly. You stayed, Gideon said. So did you. He rose and kicked dirt over the coals. Red Mesa's 3 hours west. Marisol looked toward the pale rim of sun. What if I get there and hate it? Then you leave. What if I never learn to be what you want? Gideon tightened the cinch on his gelding. What if what I want is for you to stop guessing what other people want? That sentence followed her all morning. Red Mesa Ranch appeared just before noon, tucked below a long ridge of rust-colored stone. It was not grand. A low adobe house, a barn patched in 3 kinds of lumber, corrals leaning but standing, windmill blades turning slow against the white sky. Smoke lifted from the kitchen chimney. Dogs barked once, then twice, then came racing through the dust. Marisol's hand went to the knife again. Gideon saw it. This time he spoke. Nobody touches you there without hearing from me. Marisol stared at the ranch. That's supposed to comfort me? No, he said. It's supposed to be clear. The first person to meet them was Rosa Mercado, who came out of the kitchen with flour up both forearms and a wooden spoon in one hand. She stopped dead. Then she looked at Gideon. You went for lamp oil. I got it. And brought a woman. That too. Rosa looked Marisol over, not softly, not cruelly. The way a cook looks at a cracked jar, deciding whether it can still hold water. Then she wiped one hand on her apron and offered it. Rosa Mercado, I keep this place from poisoning itself. Marisol stared at the hand. Hands had dragged her, hit her, traded her, roped her to a platform. Rosa simply waited. No hurry, girl. After several seconds, Marisol took it. Rosa's grip was warm and strong. Good, Rosa said. You can wash before stew. Ansel Boone limped from the barn, gray beard dusty, knee wrapped in cloth. What'd he do now? Rosa answered before Gideon could. Brought home trouble with cheekbones. Ansel grunted. Marisol stiffened, but Ansel's eyes caught the swollen lip, the rope burns, the bruised shoulder. His face changed by half an inch. That was all. Trouble eats? He asked. Marisol did not know what to do with that. Gideon said, Usually. A boy of 17 leaned out from the tack room doorway, all elbows and curiosity. Noah Pike. He stared until Rosa snapped the spoon in his direction. Boy, close your mouth before flies rent it. Noah flushed. Yes, ma'am. Inside the house, the table was already set. Tin plates, thick stew, cornbread wrapped in cloth, coffee black enough to stand a nail in. Marisol stopped at the threshold. Rosa noticed. No one's making you cross it, she said. Marisol looked at the doorway like it had teeth. Then she stepped inside. No one clapped. No one blessed her. No one asked where she had been. They ate. That was harder than questions. Questions she could fight. Kindness made her look for the bill. After supper, Ansel pointed toward the yard. Roof over the chicken shed leaks. Marisol's shoulders went tight. There it is, she said. Ansel frowned. There what is? The price. The price is eggs, not drowning. I don't know roofs. Neither did Noah. He still barely does. Hey, Noah said. Rosa slid Marisol a second piece of cornbread. You can learn, or you can sit and glare holes through my wall. Either way, eat first. The next morning, Marisol worked, not because anyone ordered it, because standing still made her feel like a target. She carried boards, she held nails. She missed the hammer twice and split one plank clean through. Ansel looked at the damage. Marisol waited for the shout. He only said, Wood's cheap, fingers aren't. Hit slower. By noon, her palms burned. By afternoon, Noah had talked so much, she considered testing how far a hammer could be thrown. Then a scream cut from the north corral. Whoop black Mustang slammed against the rail, eyes white, rope burning across its neck. Noah grabbed the lead and got dragged 3 steps through dust. Let go! Gideon shouted.
Noah did not let go fast enough. The horse reared. Marisol moved before anyone else. She slipped under the rail, snatched the loose end, then dropped her weight sideways instead of pulling back. "Stop fighting his face," she snapped. Noah stumbled away. The Mustang struck out.
Marisol did not flinch. Her voice changed. Low. Not sweet. Certain. "You already know the rope is there," she murmured in Spanish. "No need to die proving it." The horse's ears flicked. Dust trembled around its hooves. Marisol turned her shoulder, made herself smaller, and breathed out slowly. The Mustang lowered its head by 1 inch, then another. Gideon stood outside the rail with one hand half lifted, afraid to help, afraid not to. Marisol extended her palm. The horse's nostrils widened over her fingers. A long minute passed. Then the animal stopped shaking. Noah whispered, "How'd you do that?" Marisol kept her hand on the rope burn. "He was not mean. He was heard too late." No one answered. They all understood there was more than one horse in the pen. After that day, the ranch shifted around Marisol by small degrees. Rosa gave her a shelf in the kitchen and said nothing when Marisol hid bread behind a flour sack. Ansel corrected her work without touching her hands. Noah asked questions until she told him if he asked one more before breakfast, she would bury him upright. Gideon gave her space. That, somehow, was the hardest part. Space left room for choosing. And choosing was a muscle Marisol had not used in years. On the 4th evening, Gideon stood on the porch and placed a small iron key on the rail. "Room by the pantry," he said. "Door sticks in damp weather. Window opens if you lift hard." Marisol looked at the key. "You lock me in?" "It locks from your side." "Why?" "Because a room is not yours until you can keep people out of it." She picked up the key like it might burn her. "No one ever gave me a key unless they planned to take it back." Gideon looked toward the darkening ridge. "Then keep it long enough to prove me wrong." That night, Marisol locked the door, then unlocked it, then locked it again. She slept with the key under her palm. For the first time in years, no one came through. By the end of the week, she had learned which floorboard groaned outside Rosa's pantry, which dog could be bribed with corn crust, which saddle girth pinched the bay mare, and which corner of the roof caught moonlight before dawn. She had not learned how to trust it. Trust came slower than chores. On the 8th day, Clem Voss rode into Red Mesa with 2 men and a deputy from San Aurelio. The ranch dogs started barking before the riders reached the gate. Marisol was in the corral rubbing salve into the black Mustang's neck. The horse lifted its head. So did she. Clem tipped his hat. "Well now," he said, "there's the runaway investment." Gideon came out of the barn, wiping axle grease from his hands. "She has a name." Clem smiled. "She has charges." The deputy looked uncomfortable, which told Marisol he had rehearsed being braver. Clem held up a strip of cut leather. "My sorrel mare vanished last night. Found this bridle tie near the South Road. Somebody who knows horses took her. Somebody with light fingers and no papers." Marisol felt the old platform rise under her feet again. The rope, the crowd,
the laughter deciding what truth was.
Rosa stepped onto the porch with her spoon in hand. Ansel came from the shed. Noah froze beside the water trough. Clem pointed at Marisol. "She comes with us." Gideon did not reach for his gun. That made the moment more dangerous. "No," he said. The deputy swallowed. "Gideon, don't make this hard. If she's innocent, town can settle it." Marisol almost laughed. Town had already settled what she was worth. Clem's gaze moved to her face. "You run now, girl. You prove me right." There it was, the fence. Stay and be dragged. Run and be guilty. The old choice wearing a new coat. Gideon looked at Marisol, not at Clem. "You do not have to answer him." "You answering for her now?" Clem said. "No." Gideon stepped aside. The space he left was wide enough for Marisol to walk through. That hurt more than if he had ordered her to stay, because part of her wanted an order. Orders were awful, but at least they carried the blame. Choice put the weight back in her own hands. Marisol looked at the deputy, then at Clem, then at Gideon. "I didn't take his mare," she said. Clem chuckled. "That's so." "Yes." Gideon nodded once. That was all, but it landed in her chest like a door bar sliding home. Clem's smile tightened. He leaned closer in the saddle. "You'll come back to town sooner or later. A wild thing always runs out of places." Marisol's fingers curled into the Mustang's mane. "No," she said. "A trapped thing runs. A wild thing remembers the open." Clem's eyes hardened. He wheeled his horse and rode off with the others. Dust swallowed them by the creek bend. Noah let out a breath. Rosa muttered something in Spanish that made Ansel cough into his hand. Gideon turned to Marisol. "You all right?" She looked at the road. "No." "Fair enough." That night she packed. She did it quietly, in the room that locked from her side. Bread in cloth, the knife in her boot, the key in her hand. She told herself she was leaving before the ranch paid for her, before Clem burned their hay, before the deputy came back with more men, before Gideon's kindness became a debt she could never repay. At the barn, the black Mustang watched her from the corral. Marisol saddled the spare gray mare instead. A lantern flared behind her. She turned with the knife half drawn. Gideon stood 10 paces away. He looked at the bundle, then at the horse. His face did not change. "Gray mare pulls left near the arroyo," he said. Marisol stared at him. "That's what you have to say?" "You already know the road east. West has more water." "You won't stop me?" "No." "Even now?" "Especially now." Anger rose in her so fast it tasted like metal. "Why?" Gideon held the lantern low. "Because if I make you stay, Clem wins without riding back." Marisol's eyes burned. She hated him for making the door open. She hated herself for wanting him to close it. Gideon reached into his pocket and held something out. Her room key. "You forgot this." "I don't need it." "No," he said, "but it is yours." She did not take it.
So Gideon set the key on the fence post and walked back toward the house. Marisol stood in the lantern smoke long after he disappeared.
Then she mounted the gray mare and rode west. The desert accepted her the way it always had, cold, wide, unasking. For an hour, freedom felt familiar. Then she heard horses in the dry wash below, men's voices. Clem Voss. Marisol slid from the saddle and crawled to the edge of the arroyo. 3 horses stood tied among the mesquite. One was Clem's sorrel mare. 2 were Red Mesa horses. A 4th man was pouring coal oil along a stack of dry brush. Clem's voice carried up through the rocks. "Ward will come chasing by morning. We say she cut the fence, stole his horses, fired the hay shed, and ran. By the time truth limps in, she'll be across the border or dead in a ravine." The deputy said, "This is too much." Clem answered, "No. The auction was too public. This cleans it." Marisol lay perfectly still. There it was. The truth by morning. Her father had been right. At night, everything looked closer than it was. Fear looked like wisdom. Running looked like freedom. And a key left on a fence post looked like a thing you could walk away from. She could still leave. She had the mare. She had food. She had darkness. No one at Red Mesa had tied her. No one at Red Mesa had bought her. No one at Red Mesa had made her promise to return. That was why she turned the gray mare around. By the time Marisol reached the ranch, the first flame had already climbed the far hay shed. "The fire!" Noah screamed. The yard exploded into motion. Ansel limped with a water bucket. Rosa dragged sacks away from the kitchen wall. Gideon ran toward the corrals as panicked horses slammed against the rails. Marisol rode straight through the smoke. "Open the north gate!" she shouted. Gideon turned. For half a heartbeat, he only saw that she had come back. Then he moved. Marisol swung down, cut the rope on the black Mustang's pen, and stepped in front of the terrified animal. Smoke rolled low. Sparks snapped against her sleeves. The Mustang screamed and reared. Marisol stood her ground. "Listen to me," she said, voice raw. "Not the fire. Me." The horse's hooves struck inches from her boots. Noah shouted her name. She did not look away. "Me," she said again. The Mustang dropped. 1 breath, 2. Marisol caught the lead and moved, not pulling, not forcing, asking with every step. The Mustang followed. Once he moved, the rest of the horses moved too, through the north gate, across the hardpan, away from the burning shed. Gideon and Ansel drove the last of them out while Rosa beat sparks from the fence with a wet blanket. Clem's men rode in too late to make their lie neat. They came through the smoke expecting panic. They found Marisol waiting with Clem's sorrel mare on a lead rope and coal oil on the deputy's sleeve. For once, the crowd was small. Gideon, Rosa, Ansel, Noah. 3 guilty men. 1 woman who had run far enough to choose the road back. Clem reached for his gun. Gideon's rifle was already raised. The sound that followed was not a shot. It was the click of Clem understanding the night had turned. The deputy dropped his pistol first. Then one of Clem's riders. Then the other. Clem stared at Marisol with hatred so plain it no longer knew how to dress itself as law. "You should have kept running," he said. Marisol's face was blackened with smoke. Her hair had come loose from its braid. One sleeve was burned through near the cuff. She held the sorrel's rope and looked at him. "I did," she said, "all the way back." By morning, San Aurelio heard 3 versions of the story. In Clem's version, he had been misunderstood. In the deputy's version, he had been misled. In Noah's version, which grew larger every time he told it, Marisol rode through a wall of fire on a demon horse and stared down 5 armed men with one burned sleeve and the wrath of God in her eyes. Rosa told him to stop improving history until at least after breakfast. The truth was quieter. The hay shed was half gone. 2 horses were cut on wire. Ansel's bad knee swelled to twice its size. Gideon's hands were blistered from hauling burning boards. And Marisol slept for 14 hours with the room locked from inside and the key under her palm. When she woke, sunlight lay across the floorboards. For one terrible second, she did not know where she was. Then she heard Rosa humming in the kitchen, Noah arguing with a rooster, Ansel cursing a hinge, Gideon speaking low to the horses outside. The ranch was not quiet. It was alive. Marisol dressed and stepped into the yard. Gideon was rebuilding a section of fence near the north gate. He saw her but did not call out. She walked to the fence post by the barn. The iron key still sat there, right where he had left it. Dust had collected along one edge. Marisol picked it up. Gideon came over slowly. "I thought you did not need it," he said. "I don't." "Then why take it?" She looked at the house, the barn, the burned shed, the corrals, the ridge beyond all of it. "Because I can leave with it." Gideon nodded. "That is the point." 3 months later, no one at Red Mesa called Marisol tame. Not after she broke the black Mustang to saddle without breaking his spirit. Not after she made Noah redo every knot on the pack string until he could tie them blindfolded. Not after she stood in San Aurelio's main street and watched Clem Voss hauled away without lowering her eyes. The town tried to make a legend out of Gideon Ward. He refused it. The town tried to make a warning out of Marisol Vega. She refused that too. By autumn, riders came from 2 valleys over to ask who had gentled the black horse at Red Mesa. Gideon would point to Marisol. Marisol would correct him. "I didn't gentle him," she would say. "I listened until he stopped expecting pain." Some men understood. Most did not. That was fine. Red Mesa understood. On the first cold morning of November, Rosa found Marisol standing on the porch before sunrise, wrapped in an old coat, looking east toward the road that led back to San Aurelio. "You leaving?" Rosa asked. Marisol felt the iron key warm inside her fist. The old answer rose first. Always. Run before the rope comes back. Run before the kindness changes shape. Run before a door closes and calls itself shelter. But behind her the house smelled of coffee. The dogs slept in the dust. The black Mustang waited at the rail, ears forward. And inside her locked room, an extra blanket lay folded at the foot of the bed, because Rosa pretended not to know cold woke her before dawn. Marisol looked at the open road, then at the key in her hand. "No," she said.
Rosa leaned against the doorway. You sure? Marisol closed her fingers around the iron. For years, every key she had known belonged to someone else. A jailer, a traitor, a door she was not meant to open. This one was different. It did not prove she belonged to the house. It proved the house could not claim her. I'm sure for today, Marisol said.
Rosa smiled. That's how people stay. One today at a time. The sun rose over Red Mesa in a clean gold line. Marisol turned from the road and stepped back inside. No one had tamed her. No one had bought her. No one had taught her to kneel. They had only left the gate open long enough for her to learn the difference between a cage and a home. And for the first time in her life, the key in her hand did not mean a door had shut. It meant one had opened.